Let's start. Pledge of allegiance.
Give
Pledge of
them-
allegiance to the flag. Right. Next on the agenda, approval of minutes, April 25th. I was not there. Anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes? Do we have a second? On favor? Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you, Ryan. Third on the agenda, 505 West Butler Avenue, sketch plan review. And it's the expansion of the storage building expansion. Hello, if you can introduce yourself and your project, that would be great.
I will do my best. I'm William Benner, the attorney for the project, and with me is to get ready for this evening's review. I took a walk down memory lane, and it was just about 6 years ago that I appeared before this body on behalf of when Nolan presented its conditional use plan for consideration by his planning commission. And I know I see some fresh faces, but that conditional use application was approved in June of 2017. And as we all know, the purpose of the conditional use was to redevelop the empty Acme building, turn it into a personal storage. And there was very detailed review back in 2017, and our representatives from Nolan Development were here, and they talked about the project, and they made a series of promises that found their way into the conditional use decision. And over the 5 or 6 years that the facility has been operating, it has, at least to the best of Nolan's belief, they've been good neighbors. There haven't been any difficulties. There have been enforcement notices of violations. And from Nolan's point of view, their projection that New Britain Township needed personal storage proved to be accurate because it built occupancy sooner than anticipated. And so now they've come back before you with a land development plan that proposes to increase the building footprint by about 20,000 square feet. And within that expansion will be additional personal storage uses. The purpose of tonight's meeting is really not to talk about Janine's review of the sketch plan. That's going to come later. What's coming up soon is going to be an application to the zoning hearing board for a couple of variances. Nolan Development thought it was a good idea to submit a sketch plan to solicit the comments from the planning commission, and then proceed to the board of supervisors and take their temperature as to whether they support the variances, oppose them, or remain neutral. And so that's what we'd like to talk about this evening. And so what's based on the applicant's internal review, it's pretty clear that to move forward with this project, Nolan Development is going to need a variance to increase the maximum building coverage. The ordinance has a limitation of 75,000 square feet. The initial project consumed about 66,000 square feet. The proposed addition is approximately 20,700 square feet. So the variance is to increase the building size by that little, between 11 and 12,000 square feet. Looking at the Gilmore Associates review, Janine has identified the possibility that there may also be a need for a tree disturbance variance. And although it was a long time ago, when Acme was developed, the ordinance permitted an 80% disturbance of the trees. Over a period of time, the ordinance has changed, now it's 50%. And the calculation for the tree disturbance is right about at the 50% level. And before the applicant proceeds to the zoning hearing board, there's going to be some more detailed surveying to more accurately capture whether the proposed expansion encroaches into the 50% limit. And at this time, it's not possible for me to tell you whether there will be a need for a tree disturbance variance. And there's also a possibility that, that there may be a need for a small front yard setback variance. This lot is a corner lot. It has frontage on Butler Avenue and frontage on Schoolhouse Lane. Although I think from all practical purposes, I think most people would consider the frontage on Schoolhouse Lane to be a side yard, but for zoning purposes, a lot that fronts a street, the ordinance requires a front yard setback, and the ordinance isn't exactly clear. There are two different standards. There's one standard that indicates that the setback should be 75 feet measured from the property line, and that's a requirement in the J25 regulations for a personal storage use. The C2 regulations call for a 100-foot setback measured from the street. So that needs to be evaluated, and probably an opinion from the zoning officer to interpret these two different standards as to which is applicable. But in either event, it's not going to be a significant variance. So that's a broad overview. I'll conclude my comments by saying that Nolan believes that it has met the township's expectations going back 6 years ago when it initially proposed this project. Nolan believes that if anything, the need and the demand for personal storage has increased and not decreased, and asks the rhetorical question, if not here, then where? Because there is a need. And in this instance, there's a known owner who's been a good steward of the property and has tried to the best of its ability to satisfy the requests from New Britain Township. Part of the project, although as I mentioned, it's not the intention of Nolan to go point by point through the Janine Marchand review letter, although I'll just add in passing that it was a very comprehensive review. It's a very helpful review, and will serve as a good roadmap if the zoning hearing board application succeeds. But one of the points that Janine makes in her review, and I want to highlight this, is that going back to the time when Acme developed this property back in the 90s, there have been substantial changes to New Britain Township stormwater management ordinance, and if this project moves forward and reaches the land development plan stage, there will be very substantial improvements to the stormwater management system, bringing it into compliance with today's standards. And one of the things that you'll see once I hand over to Rachel, and she'll explain the vision for the redevelopment of the property, is that the Nolan has proposed a substantial increase in the amount of green space. It proposes that the very large parking field in front of the existing self-storage facility will be redeveloped, turned back into pervious lawn area. At the time that Nolan came before the board back in 2017, there was some thought that perhaps this property could be subdivided. On further study, Nolan has reached the conclusion that subdividing the property, adding a second user to this property, it's an exercise that's not likely to happen. Frankly, they reached the conclusion that any other use on this property would be incompatible with the storage use. So as a result, the project that's now before you will in all likelihood represent the ultimate build out of the property. And in doing so, to address some of the comments that the Bucks County Planning Commission has issued, that other township consultants have issued, they've looked at a means by which portions of the property, which is essentially redundant parking, can be turned into green space. So those are the highlights. Unless there's any preliminary questions of me, I'd like to turn it over to Rachel.
You were in front of the board sketch plan last year, correct? I believe. Because I recall us discussing this.
You got planning commission.
Yeah,
I'm not aware that I know there has been.
because I remember discussing the issues with the expansion due to the green space.
That's possible, and that may have been informal. I mean, I've been presenting Nolan and going back to 2016. And if there was contact, it was on the most informal of.
Maybe I just.
We didn't review, I may have, I think. So. I may have,
Yeah.
just because they were on it.
Because I remember what you were talking, was you were very concerned about the open space.
Yeah, I mean, there have been, this project has been in planning for about a year. There were sketch after sketch after sketch, and there was interactions with the township administration, and over time, the project evolved. At one point, the project envisioned an expansion of about 24,000 square feet. And now it's at 20,700. And all of that was, and some of these adjustments were to minimize the disturbance of trees. But now, it's reached a point where Nolan believes that this is a plan that is a good plan. It addresses their needs without compromising the ordinance or the natural resources on the property.
Sorry, I stand corrected. You have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Butts with Sir Walter. I'm the design engineer. Sketch plan. I did just look in my file when you mentioned that we did do a formal sketch plan submission back in December of 2022. I don't know whether we were here to discuss it, but we did take some of those comments from that letter to then revise to prepare for this sketch.
So we'll look right and we'll look wrong.
Yeah.
No matter.
So
Rachel, you start. There was no zoning officer group separate review, because you mentioned that you're making a trip for zoning. Sure, but there's no separate review, so we don't have all the zoning issues identified.
Yeah, I don't
I don't think there's anything issue. So, as with just a sketch.
Yeah, Craig, I think you're right.
So that's one thing that I suggest, that if you're looking to make sure that it's not like there's interpretation.
Yes.
I suggest maybe say, but I wasn't. Just if that's what you choose to do to outline it before you submit.
That's exactly what the plan is going to be, but before zoning, before Nolan makes a request for a zoning determination, they want to make sure that the facts are correct. They want to make sure that that there is an accurate tree inventory, that the calculations are correct. But there is an interpretive issue concerning the front yard setback. The ordinance is a tad confusing.
Okay, so like Mr. Benner already kind of indicated, this site was set up and designed for acne, right? So we have parking in the front, large building. It's a two-story building now when they self-storage use. They're proposing a two-story addition. The way that the location of the building on the site, it makes the most sense to do the expansion towards Schoolhouse Road. That's where there's the most space, with the side yard there. The challenge is that right now there's a drive aisle that goes behind the Acme for circulation. And the expansion goes right on top of where the existing drive aisle is. So we'll have to widen the drive aisle to go around the new addition for emergency access. And we did actually share this sketch with the fire marshal, either between the last sketch plan and this sketch plan, to get his feedback on the width of the lane, and make sure that that was going to be accessible and could handle their fire trucks. The thing that's tricky is that where this expansion is also partially where the stormwater basin. So we're going to have to provide that stormwater basin. It'll need to be activated. Much grading problems with landscaping in there, and then also find another location, most likely in the front of the building, to put another stormwater basin to kind of offset the volume that we're going to be taking. So the parking, that's kind of something that right now is, as you drive by, it's unused. It's not, this current use doesn't need that amount of parking. I think the ordinance requires 37. We're proposing, this layout proposes to remove 170 spaces in that front section. So for the first about 150 feet from Butler Avenue will be all green space, whereas it's perfect. This landscaping plan was kind of our initial, shot at trying to comply with the landscape requirements, the ordinance, adding some trees in the parking islands, putting some more street trees along the front where they're missing. So the other thing that's shown on this plan is the sidewalk that are existing. There's a sidewalk along the frontage actually on both sides of Butler and along Schoolhouse Road. And then there's a sidewalk along Schoolhouse Road there. So the other thing that's kind of a challenge with where the addition is the water and sewer are on Schoolhouse Road. So we'll have to work with the water and sewer authority to make those connections, keep those connections active, make them work for the new addition.
You said they're on the side of the building or they're coming off?
They're coming off, the mains are in Schoolhouse.
Through the chief, and the
There's an easement.
venue.
As far as traffic, this use is extremely low for the amount of cars that it generates. Of what this addition is proposing, it's a minimal increase in the traffic engineer required by the ordinance. Look at it, if needed to take an opinion on, I guess confirm that this use is not effectively generated. That obviously would be happy with. I mean, that's kind of it for the physical improvements. As far as drainage, everything drains away from Butler. Back through the base, there are storm sewers already in place at the site. We would intend to use them where possible, reuse them, and direct them to the existing basin or to new basin. Any questions on?
I have a question.
the green space where like the parking spaces are, would they put grass there or like trees or? It would be primarily lawn, yeah, primarily maintained lawn. And then supplement along the frontage with probably shade trees and large maple trees. And I don't think there's any evergreens that, there might be some existing evergreens on there, but we would propose large shade trees.
And with this property, would it have to comply with our overlay?
But yes. And the intent is,
Then we didn't have it at the time, because in the initial development.
I think it did.
We did, I think it
Did
was,
they?
yeah.
you
6
did.
years ago?
I
Yep.
think so.
So it's conditions and. So then. So they had,
They didn't have
they had, they have to find the.
to do with that, yeah.
You guys started asking me some issues before, that there was no land development process. It was just conditions, only because there was no.
There was no development.
Right,
Which is
it was all
recommended.
internal.
It was all internal, it was a change of use.
But as I recall, I remember that, compliance with the, Butler Avenue overlay district, which is top of the conversation and there were architectural, and so here discussed, approved.
I read through everything. There's. I mean, I don't think that's really coming into play anyway, you're gonna match, you know.
Yeah, the intent is, right now, there's there's an overhang that goes along the sidewalk in front of the storage building. I think it's metal, and the intent is to extend it to that portion of the proposed addition where pedestrians will walk, so that they can walk on this protected area, and it would match the it would match the review of the facade. The intent would be to have the front elevation match the front elevation of the existing building, and for the we're calling it a front yard, but it's in all practicality, it's a side yard. Right now, there's a, I'm not sure what the technical term is. It's some type of a decorative block. And the intent would be to use the same type of decorative block on the side of the building.
What's the difference in square footage between your addition and then the green space? You know that off the top of your head? Like, is it 20 or like you remove some of the parking lot?
Additions 20,000 square feet, some of that is on impervious flooring. Parking to be removed, about 35,000 square feet in the front. 14,000. So we're removing about 50,000 and putting back 20.
That's good. Good trade-off. I do like the more green space at that intersection. That parking lot is only see 3-4 cars there.
Yeah.
And then if you comply with the overlay, that'd be a nice continuation all the way through the wall.
And county builders.
Yeah, I wanted to do the same thing, so that would be
Show up on the line.
and then the buffer on the right side on Schoolhouse Road, that would mostly remain, right? There's no, all the major trees would remain there to protect the residents across the street.
There may be some disturbance because some of the water and sewer lines may have to be relocated.
Right. Any other comments? No?
They tell you that, the mention about outside storage or outside. The storage is very popular. 7 miles in state stretch. Some and some the John. Michigan is doing well. And the board did in the last one, they chose to go with mixed use. By right. Because of your facility and using the one down the road, they weren't really looking for any storage in the area. So good for business. Yeah, so the other thing is just, and I understand that's the logical place for your building. I think you made some big. That's going to be some sensitivity out to the